It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out those links in the description. The Discord has been popping lately. I'd love for you to join. Today we are talking about Teval, Arbiter of Value. We're also going to have a video for the Commander version of Teval coming out today, so if you're interested, you could check that one out. But Teval, Arbiter of Value is a 5-mana 6/6 Spirit Dragon with Flying and Lifelink. All of the spells we cast have Delve, so we can exile cards from our graveyard to pay for a colorless mana as many times as we want for them. And whenever we cast a spell, we lose life equal to its mana value. It's a very interesting set of abilities. Delve for all of our spells is very helpful, especially if we can fill our own graveyard. We're in a color combination that's very good at doing that, so that's going to be pretty easy to do. And then losing life when we cast a spell is not ideal, but I think it's something we can get around with, of course, Teval having lifelink. We can get some other creatures to have lifelink, or give our creatures lifelink. And I think overall we'll just be in half decent shape. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos early, if you're just $1 a month, check out that link down below. But I think probably the easiest way to set up this Delve idea is to fill our graveyard so that we can use it to help reduce these spells, right? And then, since we have a bunch of things in our graveyard, we could just care about things being in our graveyard, things leaving our graveyard, recurring things back out of our graveyard. We kind of get to play this double-edged thing of having it for the Delve, but also using it. So, as far as getting things into our graveyard, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. We have things like Glarb, it can tap just to surveil 2, and lets us try to play things off the top of our library if we want to. Diviner of Mist is going to mill some cards whenever it attacks, and actually then lets us play a spell back out of our graveyard with mana value 4 or less, either an instant or sorcery for free, which is really nice. Golgari Grave Troll and a couple other dredge spells in our deck are nice, because if they're in our graveyard, we can bring them back to our hand to mill that many cards, allowing us to just continue to refill our graveyard and get cards in there. Hermit Druid's a really fun piece of self-mill. You pay green and tap it and reveal into your cards from the top until you hit a basic land. The basic land goes to your hand. The rest go to the graveyard. Just a nice way to fill our graveyard. And it just got that nice reprint in Innistrad Remastered. Nyx Weaver is going to mill us 2 cards at each of our upkeeps. And then we can pay 3 mana to exile it to just bring a card from our graveyard back to our hand. Again, nice to have these recursion pieces, especially if we can't always cast things out of our graveyard. We can get things back to cast them. Sidisi, whenever it comes in or attacks, is going to mill a couple cards. Whenever creatures are milled, we get to make a zombie token. Again, it's nice to get value from them going into the graveyard as well as being in the graveyard. Dread Summons is going to have everybody mill X cards, and then we can make a zombie for each creature card that was milled. This is really fun with Delve, obviously, because we could just exile a bunch of cards if we want to, making people mill even more and just going hard on that, right? And then potentially get us a ton of tokens that way. Life from the Loam, probably one of the most popular dredge outlets. Being able to be cast to bring some lands back to our hand, and then be able to be, dredged again, just allowing us to continue that dredge train going. Hedge Shredder, whenever it attacks, you can mill a couple cards, but whenever one or more lands are put into our graveyard from our library, we can just put them on the battlefield tap. This is really nice, because then we'll have more mana on future turns for more spells that we don't necessarily have to use stuff from our graveyard to cast. Mesmeric Orb is a great way to mill not only us, but our opponents. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller has to mill a card. Going to help us really fill up our graveyard. Same thing with Ripples of Undeath. At the start of our first main phase, we got to mill 3. And then we can pay 1 and 3 life to bring one of those cards back to our hand if need be, especially if we don't have a way to cast something and we really want it back. That's really nice to have that option, and I think would happily pay the life, especially since we can gain it back later. And then Sultai Ascendancy was printed before they coined Surveil, but it basically has Surveil 2, look at the top 2, you can put them either in the graveyard or back on top. As far as the graveyard mattering, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I think things that care about cards leaving your graveyard are top tier, right? Especially with Delve. Things like Karo Goldkeeper and Kishla Skimmer from the main set feel really good here, because we're going to have a ton of cards leave our graveyard. Probably one of the best ones for us is Kira Goldkeeper. Whenever one of our cards leave our graveyard during our turn, we get to make a treasure. This is really great because every time a card's leaving our graveyard, we're getting a treasure. I'd have to reread Delve. My guess, and I apologize if I'm wrong here, my guess is that when we exile cards with Delve, they would be considered one or more cards. If I'm wrong on that, that's great, because then Goalkeeper just leaves you with more treasures. But even if it isn't, we have so many other ways for it to have cards leave our graveyard that we should be able to make those treasures and really get value from it. Kishel Skimmer draws us a card once per turn when a card leaves our graveyard. Again, just great getting that card draw back to our hand. Sir Conrad says whenever another creature dies, a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere, or a creature leaves our graveyard, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Again, great. Hopefully we can take advantage of all 3 of those, just getting in for some damage to our opponents. The other Teval the Balanced Scale, feels great here, allowing us to mill some cards on attack and bringing lands back in tapped. And whenever one or more cards leave our graveyard, again, make a token. Useful here because, right, Delve is going to be us having cards leave our graveyard, so it's going to make these tokens, and the tokens can be really nice to help us on our board state as we push in towards our opponent. Tormod the Desecrator, whenever one or more cards leave our graveyard, make a zombie token. So again, same thing, care about those cards leaving. And then Will of the Saltide just seems really interesting. So we could choose one, but if we have our commander, we can do both. We can have somebody mill 3 and then return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. Most of the time we're going to choose us to get all those lands back, but the second feels really good on Teval, especially since it has lifelink, to get X +1/+1 counters, where X is the number of lands you control, and get trample. Well, this is really nice with the first ability, right? Bring a bunch of lands back, give Teval a bunch of lands or counters, and just get in and gain a ton of life back, especially since we're going to be losing those life as we cast spells, right? Insidious Roots allow any of those tokens we make on different things to tap for mana, and then whenever creature cards leave our graveyard, we can make a plant and put a counter on each plant you control. This is really nice with Delve, because if we're delving those creatures away, delving those creatures away out of our graveyard, this can help make more plants. Polluted Cistern, whenever one or more cards are put into our graveyard from our library, each opponent loses a life equal to the card types for each card type among those cards. Again, great way to just make our self-mill matter as we're filling up our graveyard. Then Teval's Judgment, whenever one or more cards leave our graveyard, we get to choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, draw a card, make a treasure, make it 2/2. Again, we're going to have plenty of cards leaving our graveyard. Hopefully we can get all 3 of those in the same turn. I think it's easy just to look at it and say, all right, we're going to mill ourselves into our graveyard, we're going to use them to delve spells. But I think we also can, in our colors, have so many ways to just get things back out of the graveyard, and I think it's important. Having Gold Lich, we could pay a mana to be able to cast a creature spell in any graveyard this turn. Again, can hit our opponent's graveyards, but just really nice for our own, getting some of our key creatures back out of our graveyard if need be. Kaga will let us play a land or cast a permanent from among cards that were put into our graveyard from our library this turn, just allowing us to cast one thing per turn that's been milled. Very useful, right? Also kind of extends our hand if you think about it on what we have access to. A bunch of things in the deck that can make zombie tokens, especially on things leaving our graveyard. So I think Lost Monarch of Ifnir makes sense. It gives all of our zombies afflict 3, so that becomes a nice little threat. But the main that we care about is the beginning of our second main. If a player was dealt combat damage by a zombie, we get to mill 3 and just bring a creature from our graveyard back to our hand. Again, really nice to get the key creatures back in our hand that we want to play again or make sure we can play. Muldrotha, right, just unlocks our graveyard, allowing to play 1 permanent spell of each type from our graveyard each turn. A great and killer ability, and something we want to see hopefully every game. Shigeki is a very interesting one. The top half lets you pay 2 mana to bounce it back to your hand or reveal the top 4, get a land from among them, and tap to put the rest into your graveyard. And then the channel side lets us pitch it just to bring X target non-legendary cards from our graveyard back to our hand, just to get some nice recursion back that way if we need to. And again, that little bit of self-mill on the top. 6 lets us play any non-land permanent in our graveyard by just pitching a land in addition to its other costs. Again, a great thing, because we don't mind having to do that in order to get those key things back at the right time. Breach of the Multiverse lets everybody mill 10, and then for each player we get a creature or planeswalker from their graveyard back under our control. This is of course great because we could delve to make it cheaper. And we just get a creature from everybody, hopefully hitting a key creature of ours, but also just getting a ton of value as well as putting more cards in our graveyard right for that delve. Squirming Emergence could bring any permanent, non-land permanent in our graveyard back as long as its mana value is less than or equal to the number of permanents in our graveyard, which shouldn't be very hard, especially when we get towards the mid to late game. And then Glacierwood Siege, most of the time, is going to be used to let us play those lands from our graveyard, so that way we could just making sure we're hitting our land drop every turn. But I think the big difference here with Teval versus some of these other self-milled decks you're going to see out there is because we're delving spells and because we lose life equal to the spells that we cast, we want to make sure we can gain life back as well. And there's a lot of ways to go about this. We have things like Exsanguinate that can just lose have each opponent lose X and we gain that much. This is really nice with the Delve, right? Because we can make it really as big as possible and potentially gain a ton of life back as long as it doesn't get countered. Whether the Storm's nice on a big turn to take advantage of that Storm just to gain a ton of life back. 8th Flux Reservoir says whenever we cast a spell, we gain a life for each spell you've cast before this turn. This is really nice to build up that life game over the course of multiple turns. And if you take a really big turn, can put you up to using that ability to pay 50 life and just laser beam somebody out of the game. I think Whip of Erebos makes a ton of sense. Give all of our creatures lifelink. Make sure all those tokens and everything else is gaining life when they attack, so that way we're not being hurt by losing the by casting those spells. And then I think Exquisite Blood just makes a ton of sense. Whenever an opponent loses life, we gain that much life. This kind of doubles up on all of our lifelink, right? But just anytime our opponents are losing life, we're gaining life. Hopefully, getting that back, so we're not as pressed by all this life we're losing when we're casting our spells. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Teval. And I think going into testing, I would want to think about, do we need more lifelink? We have a little bit of it, but there's something like Massive Grizzlebrand that can give a creature lifelink and flying if that is something we care about. Would giving another 5/5 or a 6/6 lifelink really help us over the course of a game? Probably, yeah, right? Keeping our life total up as we're casting our things. Awaken the Honor Dead just seems fun. It's a great new saga that has value in all three of its modes. It would probably be helpful for us. And Hollowmurk Siege, I think, is one of those ones that might just look odd, but I think it could have value, especially for the abs inside. Whenever you attack, put a counter on target attacking creature, it gets medicine till end of turn. My thought is this might just better guarantee that Teval can get in every turn and gain that life back for us. I mean, Teval already being a 6/6, the first turn the Siege is going to make it a 7/7, right? And then, we know we can cast 7 or 8 or 9 mana's worth of spells every turn without really having to worry about that life loss. I think it should just get us into a better spot. I just wanted to try to make sure we were hedging our bets more across the board, but I like the idea of something like this and bringing it back in. But let's get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on the channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some game scenarios, understand how we set up our game plan. We're keeping a 4-lander here with Sidisi and Glarb, so some great ways to look off the top, and there's that Will of the Sultai. So we've got a nice start going here. We can just kind of work our way up. Sunken Hollow there, turn 2. My thought is Harbor into the Glarb on turn 3, where we get to look at the top card of our library. And we can play lands and cast spells from the top of our library. So now on turn 4, we can only cast that spell, remember, if it's mana value 4 or greater. So we can go ahead and play that island off the top if we want to. We can't play Teval this turn, so the options either get Hermit Druid down to set up for that ramp, or for the mill, right, or play Sidisi. I kind of like the Hermit Druid and just get the Path of Ancestry in. Again, we know we have an untapped land next turn, but I kind of like the Hermit Druid just as the option on future turns to just really take advantage of that. We also can tap Glarb this turn to Surveil 2, which I think we should do. We see 2 lands. Like, we want one of them for next turn, but I think we can bin the other one, right? So now in this turn, we see Goldkeeper, which we can play off the top, but I kind of like the idea of just playing Teval, right? Getting it in. I guess there is the argument for playing the Goldkeeper off the top and waiting till the next turn, since when we start casting spells, we're going to lose life, but I kind of like the idea of getting Teval in and getting that process started. We get Surveil 2. I like both of them. I guess we could put like the Marsh in the graveyard if we want to. I think we look pretty good on lands for now. But as we come into our next turn, We see Nyx Weaver on top, which we cannot cast. I don't mind the Gold Keeper. That would be, right, 4 mana. We would lose 4 life, but we got some ways to get some mana back there. We could look at something like Liliana, which we can -3 to bring a creature from our graveyard back to the battlefield. We don't have any now, but between this Surveil 2 and this mill, we could potentially see some value there. So my thought with the Surveil 2 is we could dump this Nyx Weaver. I mean, I guess technically, and we could dump the Deathcap Glade, and the top is a Foreboding. And then my thought is just pay the green into this Hermit Druid, and let's just see how deep we can go on getting some things into our graveyard. Alright, so we got a bunch of stuff in our graveyard. Liliana could get Sir Conrad back this turn. We could get Tassiger back if we wanted to. I'm just trying to think of what Liliana could specifically get back. Otherwise, I think it just makes more sense to get Sidisi in, right? I mean, we didn't know, right? Otherwise, Sidisi might have made more sense on that mill, given how many creatures we put down. Well, we'll play Sidisi, lose the 4 life. It comes in and mills 3. Whenever we mill a creature, we get one of those zombies. And now, just 1 mana left, so just have Teval attack, gain the 6 life back, so we ended up going up 2 life this turn. We already surveilled 2, so we're good to go there. And I think we're just good to come into our next turn. If I recall correctly, battles in any other zone than on the stack are considered to have the mana value of both of them, even if you only cast one side. So I do believe technically Galarb would let us cast Polluted Cistern if we wanted to. But here we've got 7 mana on board. We've got lots of cards in our graveyard, so we've got lots of options to cast. Will of the Sultai could be fun this turn, milling a couple cards and making Teval huge. We are getting at least 6 back now, which would be 13, so he would be a 19 this turn. We could potentially try to just get a couple more things into our graveyard before we do it, just to see if we can get some more value. So my thought is pay 2 for the Cistern. We're going to lose 2 life, but that's a-okay. And again, I'm pretty sure I can do that because of the way that the mana value of this works. If not, then I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's what I recall off the top of my head. We can do Galarb to Surveil 2. Oh, I like both of those. I don't really want to lose them, but we're going to mill them no matter what off of the Will of the Sultai, aren't we? So I don't really have a good choice. Muldrotha could be a really great target for Liliana on a future turn. Because we just milled, whenever one of our cards are put into your graveyard from your library, I believe technically Surveil would put them from the library. I'd have to confirm that, otherwise that's 2 life there from our opponents. And I would just Will the Sultai. I would choose both, so we're going to mill 3. That's at least 2 more life for that. And then just put all of our lands back in. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 7 lands coming back in. And Teval's getting 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 counters, bringing it up to a right up to a 20/20. And again, now it can just really hurt somebody in the air. I didn't even track the zombie tokens this turn from Sidisi, but that's fine. I guess we could have, if we wanted to. I guess what probably would have made more sense is to have used the Hermit Druid in response to the cast of that Will of the Sultai. It actually probably would have led to 1 or 2 more lands going in, making Teval a definite commander damage kill this turn. But again, now we're just in an absolute world of value. We have more mana than we know what to do with. We have something like Liliana, which could help us start getting things back. The Oubliette can allow us to get a creature back, so we can get at least 2 creatures back on a future turn. And I think we're in just not a bad spot there. They definitely got to get rid of Teval, and if they can't, then the game's just over. I expect someone could in an average game, but I mean, we gain 20 life, and you just put Teval back down, and now you just have more mana, right? Then you know what to do with. But let's get into playtest number 2. Keeping a 3-lander with Soul Ring, Exquisite Blood, the Commander of Teval, and the Reservoir. Not a bad start. I mean, we can work our way. I just realized if we do that, we can do that. Right, turn 2, we could do this into the reservoir. I just realized we could be smarter there with our first turn than putting in something tapped. Now we can go for... We could do Teval now and get the Exquisite Blood den when it attacks next turn, is my thought. Because then we come back to our turn here. Play the Exquisite Blood now, we lose 5 life, but we attack with Teval, gain 6, and then we gain 6 more off our opponent losing 6 life. So that's great, right? We gained a life here. And then 12 off the attack, so we were up 13 minus 5, so we were up 8 life. That's pretty great, right? And then as we come into turn 5, 7 mana. Teval in the Cistern. And that's 2 life off the Aether Flux. We lost 6 for doing that. But we gained 2 back off the Reservoir. Again, 12 more back off the Exquisite Blood. And now Teval's there, right, to start helping us mill the next turn. And then we could just dump in Muldrotha, but I think I would just go straight to combat and attack with both of them. Mill free from Teval. Remember that it brings a land from our graveyard back to the battlefield tap. That was 2 types that they would lose for the Cistern. That gets us a zombie druid. And then, you know, both Teval's attack in the air, potentially being, what, 12, 16 life gain because of Teval plus the Exquisite Blood. So now we're up on life. And if we can keep ourselves up on life with the Exquisite Blood, it actually might give us a better chance of this reservoir going off at least once, if not more than once. And now as we're starting to get our graveyard, especially something like that Grave Reaver, might make sense to get something like that Muldrotha down. Having that token could make sense to do something like, if we would have had them in, and we might have actually, if we were smart, we could have delved for that Hedge Shredder. But again, I don't mind this as a board state. Truthfully, if somebody removes Teval, that's fine. Really, they need to remove these 2. And so anything we can do to just keep filling up our graveyard and have ways to get things back, like with that Muldrotha, I think just makes this playtest. We're already in a great spot. We've got 1 recursion here. We've got Muldrotha. And we got the Shredder to get lands back, so we're going to keep getting zombies off of this Teval. It makes that a threat with the blood, and I think we're just in a good spot. Let's get into playtest number 3, keeping a 1/2 lander with Insidious Roots, Grisly Salvage. It's kind of a weird hand. We got the Cistern. We got the bones. It's just getting the lands, right? All right, so we don't have a blue source, right, which is that next thing. Okay, well, Cultivate really helps us get the blue source. Kind of thinking just the Insidious Roots, get it down so that way as we start to make tokens, we're not in bad shape. Next, we're going to see the Breach the Multiverse. I'm thinking we'll go Cultivate, get an island, and I guess a Swamp to hand. Again, not in bad shape. We can get Teval down next turn if we want to. Makes the most sense to me. Again, we really like the way to get some cards out of our graveyard. So we'll see what we can do here. 6 mana. We could technically delve this Breach the Multiverse right now if we wanted to. It would be brutal, right, depending on what where our opponents are at, but it'd be really good, right? It would guaranteed give us at least 1 plant from our own Insidious Roots, and we would just end up with a ton of value. It's an option. I don't even mind going like Grisly Salvage plus, you know, something like the 6 to fill up our graveyard. But truthfully, the Multiverse does a pretty good job as well. The only reason I'm kind of against the Multiverse, even though I think a Multiverse on turn 5 is wild, is just because it could give us a chance to better fill our graveyard. But let's just say, for the purposes of this playtest, that we exile this, go 6 deep into a Breach the Multiverse. What would we get from our own graveyard, right? Because we have nothing in it. 6, 7, 8... So we would get Diviner Mist, which isn't a bad choice. Diviner Mist is a great I don't know why that is. How that went all the way over there is beyond me, but oh well. Diviner Mist is a great thing for us. I mean, when it attacks, it lets us cast things back out of our graveyard, so there's a chance to get some of this stuff back. And then we got 3 of our opponent's things, and then attack for 6 to gain 6 of that 7 life we lost back. And then I think we just go into the next turn absolutely just sitting pretty, right? Well, let's do one more playtest. Keeping a 1, 2, 3, 4 lander with Teval, Grave Reaver, and Nyx Weaver. So we got some mill there, we got some mill there, and we got some nice mill there. And when creature cards gets milled, we can bring them back. And we see Ripples on Death, so not a bad way to start off, right? Getting some value. I think I'd rather start by doing our Farseek just to get some more value in. Come to our next turn. So we're still 1 turn off Teval. I kind of like doing this Teval. I see the idea of Ripples of Undeath, right? Starting to feed our graveyard. And the nice thing about the Ripples, right, is then it can start triggering this Teval when you get something back. Here my thought is, no, this Teval, attack with this one. Mill 3. Just get our choice of a land back. Make one of those druids. And now we're not in bad shape because we ramped, right? So now we're at 7 mana. 1 off that Grave Reaver, but we could do something like Farseek, right, from our graveyard to get out this graveyard. We're going to lose 8, but we're going to get 6 of it back, right, with the Teval's turn. It comes in and mills 3. I remember when it mills a creature, it comes back in the battlefield tap. We see Fleshcrafter, can have it come in as a copy of any creature. We'll have it come in as a copy of the Grave Reaver, which is going to mill us 3 again. Don't hit a creature, but that's a-okay. That is going to have a druid get made off of the Commander Teval. And then now, just whenever we mill cards, whenever we mill a creature, one of it comes back in tapped. This wasn't cast, so we don't have to worry about losing life. We're just going to go ahead and gain 6 of it back with Teval. And then on this turn, right, we've got 8 mana. Remember, we can delve. We probably should have life from the loam, if I'm honest. Just to have access to another way to, a spell if needed. Ripples feels a little late, but I still feel like it's probably worth getting down. And then I'd probably just go to attacks. We're milling 3, 6, 9 on attack. They're 3 separate triggers, though. So we'll do Teval's first. And we get our choice of a... No. I always do that. We get our choice of a land from our graveyard back. I guess we'll get the Mistrise. Then the first Grave Weaver is going to go off, getting us Galarb back. Token from the land, token from Galarb. And then the second Grave Weaver is going to go off. No value there, but I mean, Galarb got to come back in for free, and we're still gaining 6 back, 7 twice in the air, plus 4, so we're doing big damage in the air. And I think we're just in great shape, and we've got lots of mana. Life from the Loam could still be played to get us a land or 2 back to help us dredge some more. The nice part about the dredge is it works really well with the Grave Reaver, because then you're milling 3 and you have a chance to just get a creature right off the dredge. Same thing with Ripples of Undeath. It's milling you cards, meaning this Grave Reaver is just going to potentially allow you to get a creature off each of them back. Just printing value, right? But I'd love to know, what do you think of Teval down in the comment section below? This is a really fun one. I like the idea of it. I've been kind of leaning more towards the Commander Teval in my head, but I like the idea of this, especially using the delve to get you those bigger spells earlier. But I'd love to know what you think, and I will catch you all in the next